So we're moving into our workshops now. That's fine. Yeah, thank you, Zoe. I've got the thumbs up. So the first item is the waste minimisation annual program of activities. So yeah, welcome, Sally. Yeah, and hand it over to you.
Cool. So good morning, everyone. So today I wanted to come in person because I wanted to let everybody know who doesn't know that I'm actually leaving Waipa. I know.
Yeah, we know. And
so
it's really sad.
I know. So I just wanted to come and say thank you so much for your support of all my work, and it's been great to work with you guys, and I'm leaving you in some pretty safe hands. So if you look up at the screen, we've got Shelley, who's been working with me on and off for a couple of years and at a part-time basis all this year because I knew I was going to be so busy with the waste minimisation and management plan. And she's carrying on in the contractor capacity, and we shall see what happens when the role becomes available. But I just wanted to put a face to the name. And so today all I'm going to do is quickly show you an online tool. So I'm just going to run over to that computer over there. So excuse me having your backs to me, I'm fine with it. So this is flowing out from the Waste Minimisation and Management Plan. So now we've got that adopted. We had some KPIs in there. And so what I've done is I've gone through all those KPIs and I've generated a little tile on this Trello. So this is just an online planning tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to invite you all as councillors to join this Trello planning tool. Not that you can add more things, but so that you can see at any time what we have planned and what we have coming up. And you may want to share that information with the community, which is totally fine. But it's just a quick way for you to touch base with our waste minimisation and management program and see what we've got coming up. So, so this is the 6 years of our coming up WMMP. So along the top, it goes from this financial year all the way through to 2029, 2030. And I have put in some key things like ministry targets. So in 2026, 2027, the ministry target will be 30%. And you can see I just replicated the same kind of images. Then it's 40%. And then out by 2030, they're expecting 50% diversion from council. So I've tried to use the same images where the projects link across. So you can see my mouse here, preparing for curbside food scraps, starting food scraps, and then waste assessment, WMMP, things come around pretty quick. But also within here, I have at the very top, I have estimated, and I'll just make that a little bit bigger so you can look at this in more detail. So this is an estimation. Based on what I know of the levy increases, I have put in across the top what our levy income will be. And it has not been indicated to increase any more post 2026. So that's why it flatlines at 1.3. But I do imagine it will actually be higher than that, as right now is the first time the levy has been applied to lower class landfills like clean fills, and we don't really have any understanding of what the volumes are there. But again, this is all yet to be confirmed by the government. It's currently passing through legislation, but at the moment, this I feel pretty confident on because we've had a couple of quarters already, so I can estimate that up. So this is just to indicate to you, this is pure revenue in to Waipa for us to deliver locally on our waste minimisation and management plan. It has to be in the waste minimisation and management plan to be used, to be able to use the waste levy. But that's just something interesting for you. And so I will go small so you can see we have quite a lot of stuff in there. So you can scroll down within these. If you wanted it big, you just grab it on the side there and just scroll down. And these are not set in stone. So I have just spread out the KPIs as they are in the WMMP. So sometimes it says we're going to do 2 circular economy partnerships or projects, and I've just spread them out. But as we firm these up, we can just grab that and move it down there. So that's what we'll keep doing, and we'll keep this up to date for you. But, you know, we plan to do a household hazardous waste every year. So this would be Cambridge, that's Te Awamutu. Cambridge, where's the one? Te Awamutu must be down the bottom. Well, it's missing, probably because that's a big year. That's the year we start our food waste, so that one's big enough. So you can, that's kind of the high level overview of the 6 years. And you can see over the side here, you'll have another one, and I'll just make this a bit bigger. So this is our current year. So you can already see we've ticked this off, we've ticked that off, we've done our straw project, we've done our reusable produce bag project. I have got the application in with MFE for the food waste. So we've done this, we've done this, we've done this. That one's still a work in progress. And then Dawn did this bit of work for me while I was away. So this is more of a detailed one. Sorry, I didn't mean to click on that. And you can, if you want to know what the projects are, you can just click on it. And then it's got a basic bit of information. It tells you where on the WMMP, what action we're working on and what we're going to be doing. It's only short, but if you want to know anything more, like we've got our solid waste audit booked. That's action 10 from the WMMP. And some things do have a date. So this is the household hazardous waste collection in November. Yes. And so we have a date set. So if we put a date in, it's pretty much set. So that's just a way for you to look and just can keep abreast of what we've got going on. And if you had any further questions, you could obviously talk to the waste staff. So you can go to either Sabi Singh or to Shelley, who you saw before. And yeah, so this is kind of our year, and we've left next year a little bit lighter, but we've got our key things that we always do, our Waste Minimisation Community Fund, and some key dates with the long-term plan, with the pay-as-you-throw option for rubbish. So this is kind of just a way for us to share with councillors and elected members, so you can always touch base and know what we've got coming up. And any further questions you can just ask. So from this, I will invite all of you via email, and you have to sign up to Trello. That's what it's called, Trello. And then you have to accept my invitation to both boards, because there's one board on the side, the 2023-2024 program, and then there's our WMMP and MFE deliverables board. So that's what it should look like for you when you get it, 2 little boards on the side. Yeah, and that's all I just came to share today. Question?
Thank you, Sally. Now I've got a question from Susan.
Oh, look, no question. I love this. This makes, I'm such a, I love calendars. I love seeing things ahead of me. I don't like surprises. So this is my dream. I'd love this sort of application to be used across the organisation, in fairness, because sometimes feel we get a bit lost in the doing and don't quite see the long road ahead of us. So this is a really great tool for this. And obviously I love the content of it. What I don't love is the fact that you're leaving us. But well-deserved managerial position, obviously. So we, Waikato District's gain is without question our loss. And I really enjoyed not only working alongside you, but I think we should be hugely grateful as a district for the expertise you've brought and the passion and energy in this sector. I don't think we'd be anywhere near as well placed in Waipa had we not had your talents applied to our great rohi. So I wish you well, and what a great parting gift for us. So thank you, Sally.
Oh, thank you very much. And yeah, I kind of didn't really say where I was going. So I am going up, not far, up just up the road to Waikato District Council, and stepping into the Waste Services Manager role up there. So it is a big opportunity for me. So I'm not going to be far, and you know me, I love to collaborate. So I'll be linking up with projects that can be delivered in Waikato and Waipa together, you know, so that just makes total sense to me. So, but yeah, I have similarly like Susan from back when I was very new doing our e-waste days, and just so much stuff we've done with so many different council members, and I will miss you guys, but I'm sure I'll be around. I'm not going far.
Sally, now I've got some other questions. I've got Dale and then Andrew.
I tautoko au ngā mihi kua mihi a kia koe. I te marae kura, he pauri taku nākau i te pānui a koe, ko wehe koe, ka haere koe ki te kaunihira a Waikato. Tautoko, he waimari I rātou. he Waimari rātou a Waikato district. But he paku pātai ki a koe hua. Does the Trello marry up with Entino, the stuff that we can put out from Trello?
No, but we would give you more, if it's something that you wanted to share, we can let you know when we're doing a Facebook post or we do a Friday update. If it's something like, oh, hey, let the community know what's coming up, we'd do that more through a Friday update. But anything in that Trello is public. Yeah, but not the longer range one, that's still to be confirmed. But the share one, you could say, oh, hey, everyone in Te Amatu, in late November, watch out for the updates, we'll let you know, but we'll do more detailed stuff. But yeah, it's all happy to be shared.
Andrew?
Thanks. So we just sign up for the free version, I think. Of Trello, the free version.
Free?
Yeah.
Yeah, free. Yeah.
Okay, that's all. It seems straightforward enough. So.
Yeah, yeah. No bills coming.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, thanks for the chair. Yeah, we've used Trello at school a bit and it is fantastic. It keeps me honest. Yeah, so hey, one of my things is, because it fits in good with the Kaizen approach, is there any chance of having something in there of because it's nice and visual, of how far we are through a project? So like we do a wheel, for instance, cut into quarters, so 0 to 25%, and it just gives a quick, this is how far you are through. It's not a lot of admin. Probably a question for Shelley really, but yeah, just to think about it. It doesn't have to be a circle, it'd be some other way, we do it with colours, whatever. But hey, we will miss you. As an educator too, the schools are going to very much miss you. So yeah, well done, Sally.
Okay, no other questions? Yeah, so I just want to add to everyone else's, I suppose accolades to you, because you've been absolutely amazing, Sally. I'm very sorry that we'll be losing your talents and your enthusiasm, but I guess it's, Waikato's turn now. Yeah. And I'm sure Shelley will help us through the next stage. Yeah, thank you. All the very best. Yeah. Kia kaha. Yeah.
So thank you, everyone, and yeah, just use the tool and I'll just
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so our next workshop is the public transport. Is that right? Yep. And Eric. Oh, welcome, Eric. Back again. Yeah. Hopefully, we won't give you such a hard time this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're just going to bring the PowerPoint up on the screen. We've got half an hour for this workshop. What I'd like to do is to spend 5 or just over 5 minutes of just going through the presentation, and then we can have discussion and questions after that, if that's okay. Thanks. Okay, this workshop is to update elected members and members of the committee on public transport as it pertains to Waipa District. So I think a key thing is having an understanding of all the various activities going on. It is a kind of a complicated field at the moment. Share information, highlight changes, and towards the end have a bit of a check-in on our long-term plan objectives that's being considered. The agenda, so basically working from the whole to the part, look at the work from strategy to policy, to governance, and delivery of certain components, and then some initiatives that the Regional Council is considering, the CCO, and at the end we can talk about other matters. Okay, so our transport strategy, so we've got to respond to climate change and investing in public transport to encourage mode shift and increase public transport patronage through fast and frequent services or transport services, and embracing advancements in technology. If I can just clarify that first part of the sentence, that's fast and frequent services from our towns to Hamilton City. Policy direction. So the overriding for the region is, I guess, the future-proof transport. And future-proof has recently, I guess, confirmed that bus transport services will be how we interact, I guess, with Hamilton City. For a while there was discussion of passenger rail, from Cambridge to NTA to Hamilton, but that's been, I guess, the focus is on buses now. And the government has quite a few, well, they've got a lot of policies coming up with targeted at the climate change issue that they're imposing. These documents are really well captured in the Waikato Regional Public Transport Plan 2022 to 2032. And our transport strategy is very consistent and supportive of that. So governance, so there's two regional kind of committees. So there's the Waikato Regional Transport Committee, and Councillor St Pierre and Petit are on that committee. It takes a regional view. So that includes the greater, I guess, Waikato region, including, I think, Taupo and the likes of Thames and Te Arapawa and all that. And it does a lot of reporting on the services. And then there's a future-proof public transport subcommittee. And that is, Councillor Solwijk and Councillor Gordon. And that's implementing the, I guess, the Metro Spatial Plan transport components. So back in 2020, we did a business case with our funding partners and our main strategic partner, Waikato Regional Council and Wakutahi, to improve public transport services. And stage one that's referred to is enhancing the existing services to Hamilton so that they have a greater frequency of service and a extended hours of service. And and that's funded and that's in its implementation phase, and those services will commence early in the new year. And just a little note at the bottom, we need to just remember that we really want significant patronage increases on this service, or these two services. And here's just a highlight of the cost. So it is quite a big service, but you can see that there's a good share of the burden is shared by three agencies and the customers using it. And we've got a picture of a double-decker bus there. So with the new contract starting in the new year, so some of the peak hour services will be done by double-deckers, and all the services will be by electric bus. And it's the same initiative that we're creating the bus depots for overnight charging in Kiki and Leamington. And then stage two, we looked at the coverage services within our towns. So it's Cambridge, Leamington, and Oteamutu and Kiki. And and this is where it gets a little bit more fluid, I guess. So in our current LTP document, we are proposing a basic service that runs like an hourly service with limited hours of the day through the towns. And the objective is to have a bus stop, or most of the residents having a bus stop within 400 metres of the house. It's quite capital hungry, because you end up building a lot of bus stops and they've got to be built to accessible standards. I'll just show you that. So basically, every bus stop has accessible curbs, so you can wheelchair off and on really easy, and there's a seat and there's a sign and there's line marking for the bus. And then where it's more busy, you include a shelter, and we typically have bins as well when there's shelters. So that's quite a significant investment. And for that one, the funding side has yet to be endorsed by Wakutahi.
Can I just ask whether or not we can ask questions as you go? Because Philip's got a question and it looks like Dale might have one as well. That's all. And Roger.
Fine, yes, yep.
Would you rather just get through or?
Actually, I prefer to get through if I can. Yeah, because I'll go back to the slide, because I think a lot of discussion will happen at this slide.
Okay.
I think, because that's, yeah.
Okay, fine.
Okay. And so these operating expenditure tables are from our proposed LTP. So we just want to highlight that it's a significant investment. But we also recognise there's new technologies and other services that that other councils have implemented or are trialling. So any design of the stage 2 service should incorporate a really good look at other opportunities. So the terminology is door to door or corner to corner type services, and that they are on demand using an app. So I think that's a large opportunity. Stage 3 of the business case looked at having services in between our towns, so Cambridge to Te Awamutu, with linkages to Pirongia and Karapura Village. And that's very much in the future, but yeah, it's there. And then so currently there's, so the regional council provides us data on the existing services. And they have their own contract KPIs for their contracts and their levels of service. So maybe I can pose a question now, what data do we want to see? But we can maybe go back to it later. But keep that in mind. And then in our LTP, we are considering the performance measures, and this table here, so if you can just picture the services that run to Hamilton, and it's increasing patronage. And I guess we've got a modest improvement here, but that would be good to see what the aspiration is around the table. Yeah. And I guess there's another question we can come back to. The regional council floated, I think it was last year, developing a different structure of how to deliver public transport services in the region. And that's a CCO, which is a council controlled organisation entity. And there's potential benefits there. So you set up a small team with a better commercial focus, the financial risk is ring-fenced. If it's done well, it could empower local communities. There's less direct political input, I guess, in that type of service. The organisation can be streamlined, and economies of scale, and getting really good staff on that and board members on that organisation. And they're probably more adaptable for seeking funding. So some other things going on. The regional council has got those education service trials. So it's from Te Kuiti to Hamilton and Tokoroa to Hamilton. We don't have a lot of information on these trials, but our understanding, I think they're being proposed for 18 months, and they've been going for, I think, a good 6 months. All of our services heading to Hamilton, they get caught up in Hamilton traffic. At the moment, there's no bus priority systems or lanes in Hamilton City. And so we don't have a lot of control over that. And then there's, I guess at least sort of to the stage 2 services, but there's various rideshare technologies and apps available that we can consider. Local Government New Zealand, I think it's a standing agenda item regarding public transport for rural communities. For the Hamilton Te Amutakiki service, we did canvass Waikeria Prison for an extension, and they weren't really interested, the department. And the last question is, says how often does this committee want to have a workshop on this type of topic? Let's see what else we've got here. The key messages is, so the key message is, yeah, Waikato Regional Council is the lead partner in delivering new services, and the current bus service improvements, which is the stage 1 services to Hamilton, we believe we have to target high levels of patronage, quick journey times and minimum route lengths. So having quick journey times makes it more attractive for a wider pool of users. A minimum route length means it's a cheaper service to run. And having said those two things, there's always a temptation to loop the buses to get more coverage. So there's always a tension about the most direct route, quickest route, or covering a larger area and picking up more people. And that's probably an ongoing debate. We want a good, reliable service. We want a good user experience. We absolutely support the promotion of the services. So then I guess to the next question is, coverage services for our towns. And that's the end of the PowerPoint. So if I go back to where there's questions, and I think that was, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. So who was first? I think Roger and Philip, and then Andrew, and then Mike. Yeah, go for it, Roger.
Lovely. Thanks, Eric. Great. Good to see the phase 2 changing from the previous plan. I do have a couple of questions, and thank you for sharing with me the Bluetooth data, because it's helped me to better understand how that's collected, but also the information that we're getting from that Bluetooth. Sorry, I've got somebody else speaking.
You gold tits in the way.
Yes, I know. I'm just wondering how much we can say about that Bluetooth data now, because I know that it's part of Cambridge Connections. But I do believe that the picture that's painting changes our perception of the travel patterns in Cambridge. Can we talk about that now? Can you perhaps give a little bit of information to the rest of the council on that? Because certainly in terms of where we're putting our investment and the mode shift that we want, that's critical information.
Thanks, Roger. So I probably can't talk very well in detail regarding that data. So that's, our Cambridge Connections project has got that information, that Bluetooth data. What I would say though is if we provide, so the stage 1, we are providing better services right through to Leamington. And if we start considering stage 2, I think as services are improved and increased and implemented, patterns will likely change. But I'm just not, I just don't have the familiarity with the data.
Can I release some of it here, or would you prefer me not to?
Dawn, I don't think there's any privacy issues with that, is there?
I don't believe so. I think if it was requested by any party, we will provide it. But yeah, I mean, it has got some limitations, but that's been shared with the working group.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Can I, high level stuff, can I?
If you can speak to
Well, because I think it does, it kind of focuses our consideration on this stage 2. And what that Bluetooth data has identified is that in terms of the combined bridge cross Waikato traffic, that actually only 22% of that is actually destined for Hamilton. And the majority of it, the balance, is really focused on internal Cambridge traffic. So originating, particularly in the AM peak, originating in Leamington, southeast and southwest Cambridge, going across the bridges and finishing up in West Cambridge, Cambridge, the town centre, and north around the Hautapu area. So, in fact, the interpretation of that is perhaps investing in the Hamilton service as a solution to our traffic density, if you like, in Cambridge is actually not going to solve the problem, because we need to look more at that internal Cambridge traffic. And I applaud the fact that you brought the orbiter through. I'm just wondering whether this information is suggesting that we should bring that forward even more if we're wanting to achieve some form of mode shift.
If I could just add to that, so the Bluetooth, that's car traffic that's being counted.
Yeah.
So that tells me there's a huge market opportunity for getting alternatives to car, and then I guess that becomes urban mobility as well as a public system, and for some people the Hamilton bus, it will suit them to travel from one part of town to the other and vice versa. And then having a coverage service of some form will be just another enhancement.
Yeah. And I agree that it will suit some, but the current pattern of Hamilton services reflects that out of the current 16, which is going up to 26, out of the current 16, only 3 of those journeys, and that's over peak time only, is a feasible service. The others are very low occupancy, and we're investing in putting another 10 services on outside of, I think one of them's within a peak time, or 2 of them were in peak time, but the balance are in non-peak time, which I'm just questioning whether that's going to be a worthwhile investment in non-peak travel time to provide a bus service when we're still not addressing the internal Cambridge transport.
So what I can say to that is that the Hamilton bus service isn't intended to solve the local issues.
It's not intended to serve the local issues.
No, it's not intended to solve any internal Cambridge issues. I think, like I said before, there is an opportunity for the Leamington service to help out, but it's that commuter traffic to Hamilton, and commuter education, healthcare. There's lots of reasons for having it. What I would say, as a whole, that service, I think, is the best performing in the Waikato Regional Council satellite town services. So it's a yes. When you say feasible, it's every single public transport service is subsidised.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a matter of how much.
So what he's talking about is occupancy.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say, well, increasing, I just question our investment in increasing the number of journeys in non-peak time to Hamilton, when, as you've just said, that's not going to solve our challenge of achieving mode shift on the majority of vehicle trips, which are actually within Cambridge.
Got some other people that would like to contribute to this discussion. So Philip and then Andrew.
But these proposals will help towards that for local as long in urban mobility. But getting to my couple of really brief questions, we won't want to get into too many details. But 9 till 3, wouldn't you have the times to cater for school hours, like 8 to 4 type of thing? And then secondly, the next page, the bus stops were wheelchair friendly or mobility scooter friendly. So would the buses be that as well? They slope down or take a mobility scooter or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, so that a part of the question, full absolutely. Yep, the buses will be wheelchair friendly. Mobility scooter, I'm not sure. No, I don't believe so. I think they're too big.
Mobility scooters are too big. And in the timeframes there, 9 to 3.
So that's, I guess that's that's up for discussion, because you've got to start somewhere with costing a service and sort of think of it like a straw man. But the more hours of duration, the more cost. So I guess that design there is intending to limit the operational cost of the service.
I just contribute something there too, Phil, because at the Regional Land Transport Committee meeting, which was yesterday, there was quite, I suppose, a focus on the Ministry of Education services, to get kids to and from schools, because at the moment, there's no, I suppose, cooperation between the Ministry of Education and, I suppose, the community looking for public transport services. So if the Ministry of Education sees a community service that could get kids to schools, they will withdraw their service. Yeah, sort of that's no question at the moment. And so I think that explains why this business case is trying not to have an overlap with school timetables, so that at least if there are Ministry of Education
Plus
services operating, they won't be.
And we've got to
withdrawn.
cater for many needs or options, and doing the cycle paths, the walking paths, multi-purpose paths. Investment in that is going to help with all those scenarios as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, at the Land Transport Committee meeting, I think there was a desire to try and get the Ministry of Education to actually be a bit more proactive in trying to get an overall solution, that might involve some of their services contributing to community outcomes, rather than sort of just this chopping and changing of, withdrawing services as soon as they think there's a community service that might be there. But your comments about cycling connections or shared paths, I mean, I guess that's the big thing that the Bluetooth data says to me. There's great potential to encourage people doing those shorter trips, because they're within the Cambridge town boundaries, to be able to do them by bike or
Bluetooth is helping with the discussion around the bridge corridors and Cambridge connection, the whole thing. Data information.
It's great to have that data, absolutely. All right, so now I'm going to let Andrew have a say, and then Mike.
Thank you very much. Look, I don't have expertise in this field, but it seems to me that talking about orbiter style within our towns is kind of archaic thinking. And an on-demand service seems to me, I think it would be far more practical, and we already have them running in our towns at the moment. My dearly beloved For Her Sins has recently been made chairperson of the local health shuttle. It's an on-demand service, and they have quite a reasonably sophisticated system for picking people up in order and all that sort of hoo-ha. Uber, of course, has got a very sophisticated one, and it's so much more convenient for the user to simply, I want to go somewhere, they see on their phone, it is X minutes away from picking you up. There's no bus stop. It comes in, to your doorstep, basically, and delivers you to where you want to go. Like convenience, I think we'll see people use it. A lot of people, 400 meters to the bus stop's not going to happen. And yeah, I'd like to see that investigated more. The wheelchair wagon does the same thing as far as I'm aware. And yeah, I'd think we'd get a lot more utilisation. I know it won't be simple. There's been shitloads of problems to navigate, particularly around the school, times. But yeah, has there been much work done on that sort of a system?
There's a trial in Timaru that's heavily supported by Waikato, and we have yet to see a good report on that, on the performance of that trial. We do know it's expensive. I've seen, now all I've seen is headlights, sort of headlines and press releases on it. So in terms of, I think they might have 3 or 4 of those small Mercedes vans set up for wheelchair access. And they're basically, you're paying a driver to sit there and wait, and then the system consolidates trips so that little van has got more than one person in it for any sort of trip. And then it awkwardly does a corner-to-corner service. So that's quite tricky to work out. Hamilton City has a flex system now that they've started working on, or a service being implemented. Haven't seen any data on that yet. So yeah, so that's, I guess there's information to gather on that. But what I would say is the on-demand services don't really help in terms of congestion relief, because they typically, like a bus could have 30, 40, 50 people in it in one vehicle traveling through Cambridge or TA, but an on-demand service is like to be a smaller vehicle, but with less people in it too. So yeah, there's a lot to think through, but yeah.
Liz would like to say something about that. If that's all right, Liz.
Yeah. Look, I've been following that Timaru trial, and you're right, we're just waiting for some information. But I think the Hamilton Flex service will be probably far more useful. So if we can, let's ask Hamilton for that information, because from what I've heard from those councillors at the moment, that is actually working really, really well. And I think that particular model could suit Cambridge and Te Awamutu going into the future. What's really important, and I guess I'll just come back a few slides, is one thing we heard from Timaru is that morning school traffic. Parents are putting their children on those kind of flex services to get them to school. So that is a real opportunity for, within our urban centres, I think. And I think we need to make this decision, Orbiter versus Flex, based on the data. And we've got Hamilton City already working in this space. Let's get that stuff together, and that way we can kind of make a really good decision going forward. But it is costly, the on-demand, but I think it'll probably be potentially worth it if it's got far better, bigger utilisation. So that's the balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks. Just jump in very briefly. In terms of the school thing, I mean, my eldest grandson catches a school bus at the primary to go to intermediate. Much better than us dropping them off there in a car every day, I would suggest. And along with about, maybe a dozen kids. So people will use it if it's there.
I just want to say that there is a report out about that Timaru service, because I was reading about it last week. Okay, it increased patronage by 40%. Okay, but from the existing, what they would call sort of that they weren't extensive. It was is it coverage, or I suppose it's the other one, the high demand services, just the arterial routes. But the costs are pretty substantial, because each each person's trip cost $12 and it was subsidised $9 by Waka Kotahi and the regional council. I don't have the stuff on the fleet stuff. Yeah. There's another really good report which I might share as well, which is a review of the total cost of public transport across New Zealand. It's fascinating reading.
It'll be way cheaper when we've got driverless buses.
Well, yeah.
Day after tomorrow, pretty much.
Anyway, I mean, it's a good discussion to have. Now, where are we? I've got Mike and then back to you, Roger.
Be even cheaper though, Andrew, if people hardened up a bit. So yeah, I go down to Timaru and 40%, yeah, so you've gone from 2 people on a bus to 3. Timaru is a disaster, I think. So when we do get that data, I hope it's got some feedback and it's not just numbers, because the people down there are moaning hard about the cost and the lack of patronage and usage down there. So be interesting about what might come up vis-a-vis small Mercedes buses that we're talking about, that it was talked about yesterday too in the land transport meeting. Yep, exactly the same. I see them down there, no one on these things, cost a fortune. The other thing is around this whole school kid thing and buses. The only kids that we should be catering for, at least over our way, if we're looking at anything, is really eligible intermediate and high school kids, because all the rest of them, we're not here to cater for primary school kids. They should be going to a local school. And if they don't, well, that's up to their parents, or even better, I'd rather be investing more in cycleways and walkways than in more blinking buses. And kids put a raincoat on, because last time I checked, we're all waterproof. And get on and use and cycle to school as we develop this infrastructure. So I'm not under spending a lot of money on this, to be fair. Let's build the infrastructure to get kids fit and on bikes and cycling to their high school or their intermediate or their primary schools. So we're not here to cater for these children, which sounds ironic since I'm a principal, but catering for everyone else, absolutely fine. Also, this on page 17, there's approximately 280 passengers per day. Now, it sounds like the data may be there, because my question around that was, how many of those passengers are high school kids leaving Cambridge and going to Hamilton of the 280? I'd really like to know the data on that, because again, you know, should we be catering, because the ratepayers are, you know, ultimately going to help fund this along with other people. But yeah, it's just be careful what we fund, you know, because the opportunity cost what we fund is able to build infrastructure within our towns.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Really interesting discussion. I mean, what we need to focus on is that the main congestion that we're seeing is at the AM and the PM times, which is outside this 9 to 5, but it is, the school traffic does contribute to that congestion. There's no doubt about that. One of the things that you may have noticed is that the coach or the bus option for both Cambridge and TA is going to increase from a single decker to a double decker bus. Now it's going to be an electric bus, which is going to reduce. And the regional council have already stated that it's in terms of the practical management of a bus service, there is no likelihood of them having a split fleet. So if they've allocated a double-decker bus to the Cambridge and TA routes, then that double-decker bus is going to be on each and every departure, because they won't have the smaller fleet to supplement it. So I just, again, I'm concerned that investing in double-decker buses when the single-decker buses are in fact running empty. You know, it just again seems to be a a misallocation of resource in some way. And that's what I think we've got to consider. Because I mean, the current services, you've got 5, 6 people traveling on the bus, which will now be traveling on a double-decker bus.
Yeah, but
I can't see the logic of that.
well,
Andrew?
I think that an electric bus is going to cost hopefully very little to run, and provide one that does the rush hour, if you like, full,
Oh, yeah.
and then runs, you know, relatively empty, doesn't really matter. If you follow my logic.
I think too, there's always going to be, I get that tension because people won't use services unless they're frequent. I mean, this is what's coming through in the Regional Land Transport Committee data that we're getting, that when they introduced the Meteor service, I think they were getting 500 users a month on the less frequent service. And when they upped the frequency, they got 900 in one day. Like, it's a phenomenal increase. So I think definitely you can't have complete rigidity about, you know, what service is going to be provided. But I think you've got to accept that if you make the investment and make them frequent services, you should get higher patronage. But yeah, it's a risk. Yeah.
I have a request for you. These new buses, can you make sure that they're able to take e-bikes on them when we go to Hamilton? I understand our current ones won't accept e-bikes on their racks, but I'm not sure about that. But it would be nice.
May I ask another question on we are developing in Cambridge and TA charging facilities for e-buses. And that's great. And regional council are counting on us providing that charging facility. It's supposed to be finished by December, or they're expecting it to be finished by December. What's the likelihood of that happening?
They have, it's probably, so that's outside our control. So that the construction projects for the depots are regional council deliverable. So our what WIPA has provided, we've leased the sites to the regional council, and we're providing the transformer to those sites that are sized for the bus fleet that are parked there. So the leasing arrangements have been put in place, that's all done, and the transformers are being installed in November. So in terms of our council's input, that's been done, or is well underway and on the program. The Kiki site had a local purpose reverse for revocation, and it's on track for completion this month. And then, so then it becomes a question for the regional council. My understanding is that they will be late in completing the work. But I think the big picture is these are 9-year contracts, and for them, it's a whole new ballgame. This is the first time they're doing a substantial service with electrified fleet. They're also investing in charging locations at the fast speed charging at the transport centre. So for them, this is a dummy run, in fact, for the bigger picture, which is all the Hamilton services, which come up for contract renewal, I think, in 2027.
The things, they can always charge the buses back in Hamilton, I understand that. But my perception is that that work is quite a way behind.
I think that the start's delayed, but I think that the works required are fairly simple. It's not a lot of infrastructure to build or buildings to build for that.
Some of the things you've been asking us in the presentation is what data we'd be interested in seeing and how frequently we'd like to get it. So it is clear to me, not only from Andrew's comments about the health shuttle, but also from the Regional Land Transport Committee's work, that there are a lot of community services provided as well. And so when we get the data on like the number of like patronage, you know, I'd actually like it if we could get the patronage from those community services too, because that gives you a more holistic picture of the number of people that are using, I suppose, that they're getting away from private vehicle use, and are using these services. Now, Eric, because the Regional Land Transport Committee is funding some of these community groups, which I'm pretty sure include the Tūmere Health Shuttle, they should be able to provide that information, and we should be able to get data from them, I think. Yeah, and because as someone that is wanting to see that mode shift, I'd love to see some kind of gauge of that shift away from private vehicles. And sure, you know, having those patronage numbers for buses does cover it, but in a way, the Bluetooth data would be better if we had that as a baseline, and then to see so like the total number of trips that are being done in our communities. And then you could then have data on the number of people that are, how many rides in buses or with other services, because that's the metric that we're trying to shift. Yeah. It's not necessarily a case of filling the buses that we do have, is the overall number of trips that we're trying to get out of private cars. Yeah. So, and the frequency of it, I mean, I think if it was the Bluetooth stuff, I think only once a year would probably be enough, unless there was a particular target that we were trying to get, because I understand it is quite difficult to, well, it seems to be difficult to get the information. I don't know. Yeah, does it come at quite a cost as well? Yeah.
I think the Bluetooth data, I don't think it's hard to get. I don't think it's particularly expensive. I just got,
if I may, sorry, just interrupting that one there. It may well cheapen over time, but actually it's because you've got to put the information out. It's a matter of, it's generally done for a particular purpose, so that you understand particular patterns of movement. It's not necessarily a network-wide thing. If we looked at doing that, I think it might be quite a significant investment.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd just be wanting to make use of data sets that were readily available, that's all. Yeah, because I mean, the other stuff that I've noticed from looking more deeply into public transport services is they never cover more than, like, I think the highest in New Zealand was 17% in Wellington of total trips, you know, so it's never really going to solve the big congestion issues, I don't think. Yeah. But we've, as I suppose, as a governing body, we are trying to send that message that we're trying to incentivize this behavior, that we want people to reduce private vehicle use. Yeah, so that's what I was quite keen about that. I also just wanted to say about the Te Kore service, that, I mean, it's a great idea to have a service that starts in Te Kore and goes through like Otorohanga, Kihikehi, Te Awamutu, Ohaupo onto the university. But the regional council didn't promote it. You know, like they set up the service, okay, but they didn't tell anyone, particularly students who might be making decisions about enrolling, that it was actually going to be available. And I'm just dumbfounded that this kind of trial, you know, all the planning that's involved in it and the expense, and yet the word isn't put out there for people to try and use it. Now, certainly patronage may build over time, but if you're trying to maximise the benefit of something, surely we've got to do a better job of promoting it. Yeah, and I'm really concerned that these things, these initiatives are coming through, but it's not just about the infrastructure, about the number of buses or the services. We've got to make sure that we tell people about it, and yeah, it gets in people's brains that if this is here, it means I can actually stay at home in Te Kuiti and study, you know, at Waikato. Yeah, and I don't have to worry about all the extra costs of relocating and things. Yeah.
Can
Okay,
I ask
I've had my
another,
say. Yeah. No,
can
your
I
turn,
ask another
Roger.
question? In terms of the data collection, my understanding is with the PT that as long as we define which data we want, then regional council will provide that data for us. So it's not really committing our team to greater energies. It's just identifying which data we want. And one of the data sets which I find is very interesting and allows us to determine the effectiveness of the transport is to have the average occupancy of each of the timed departures throughout the day. And I think we've actually asked for that a number of times in the past, and we've been given that. So that would be useful for us to have. Yeah.
Hinirangi.
Kia ora tātou. Yeah, I just wanted to weigh into the conversation here and actually give some whakaaro on some of the points that have been made. I think there is a need for to focus on children. There is an Akura Kaupapa option in Cambridge, so children are having to travel outside of Cambridge to attend those kura. So I just want to say that I think there is a market there. It sounds horrible to me to send my primary age child on a bus to a school outside of town, but for some that's the only option there is. And also, the other thing too is I think there is a need because we're in the process of building a new school in Cambridge, and that's because there's so many children in Cambridge that need to be placed in kura. I agree. I think upping the frequency and improving access to technology and some promotion of the services would be would see a much better success rate. But the last thing I want to say is that I know that money is a big considering factor, but I think we should be thinking about other ways to measure the value of public transport. And so I think when you're gathering data, also look at the improved impacts on the taiao, on the environment. Look at the cost of removing more removing more private vehicles off the roads. I think that's a better value, a way to place or measure the value of something, not just money. Yeah, kia ora tātou.
Kia ora. Thanks, Hinirangi. That's a great suggestion. Dale.
I just want to touch on the point, Claire, in regards to the Te Kuiti to Hamilton service. I just had a quick conversation with Hinirangi. There was actually a huge amount of promo in regards to that service because both Hinirangi and I were actually at Waikato University at the time and kicked that off. And that actually was a bigger conversation that involved also members of the kingitanga to help get traction for that service to come from Te Kuiti to Hamilton. But I do want to say again, and our dear wonderful comms lady over there who's come back to us, so I do know that you're fresh back with us when I say this, it does still fold into that bigger picture of comms, because at a student level, it was really loud and we knew all about that that service, because and I'm not too sure, I can't speak on this one, Eric, but I think there is one that also goes from Tauranga to Hamilton as well. And that complemented the Te Kuiti to Hamilton, Tauranga to Hamilton, because that's where our other campus was. And so the sad part is all the students got that, but not the wider public. But that again goes back to the bigger comms strategy I think we need to address. So yeah, I'm really supportive.
thanks for that extra information. Actually, I don't feel so, dumbfounded by their comm strategy. Obviously, they thought they were focusing on, that critical, education side. Pinarangi.
And just to add to Dale's kōrero there, that the other success of that wasn't just the transport itself, it was the pastoral care that went around that and supporting the students. So all of these things contributed to the success of that. So think beyond just the transport. There is some wider manaakitanga to be carried out here, I think. Kia ora tātou.
Right, any other discussion points? Okay, are you happy, Eric? Have you got what you wanted from us?
I think so. Let's look at the questions. We've got the performance measures. Yeah, I think we're very aspirational. I think we would seek to exceed these targets with the rollout of stage 1. With promotion, I'm hearing that pretty loud and clear. And then I think there's that how we best design a coverage service for our towns, and that we look carefully at Hamilton and Timaru and others, and how they've done it, what it's cost, what the pros and cons are.
I must say, with that wider reading that I did about the public transport system, which I'm going to share with you guys as well, riveting reading, but like the massive subsidisation that's required, to actually make it work was actually quite a surprise to me. That it's never going to be funded just from user, like from fares and stuff like that. And my concern is that if central government don't continue to support it, I can't see it would be sustainable at a community level, which is one of the reasons why I've been quite keen on looking at rideshare as an alternative. But anyway, I'll share that with you as well. It was done last year, so cool. Anyway, thank you very much, Eric.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just a quick query. I think, Eric, one of the questions was the frequency of these workshop items as to how often you would like to see this reporting back on passenger transport matters. Certainly, I'm aware that I think, is it the Future Proof, is that bi-monthly, twice every other month? Regional Land Transport's obviously monthly, so is quarterly sufficient in terms of it, or that feels about right? Fabulous, cool, we will do that. Thank you.
And then the next workshop we have is Plan Change 21.
I think our team is.
Oh, okay, right, thank you. Great discussion, everyone. Kia ora koutou. Welcome, Nicola and Nathan. Sorry about that. I was told and I just had a blank. No. Welcome to the table. We've had quite an intense discussion about public transport, so we're looking forward to a more relaxed approach to Plan Change 21. Take it away. Thank you. Just press that green button. That's great.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Cool as and. Oh yeah, there we go. Brilliant. Cool. Thank you. Just I guess to kick off with the purpose. So following earlier approval to proceed with Plan Change 21, which encompasses a broad variety of urban environment updates, not including affordable housing, which is now being processed as its own plan change. We, the district plan team, have been investigating kind of the 4 issues that you see up there. So that's urban design and transportation, a potential commercial zoning framework, community corrections activities in the district plan, and then new character clusters. So yeah, we're kind of seeking feedback today, just making sure we're on the right track. And yeah, so we'll kick off with urban design. Yeah, refinement and strengthening of district plan provisions in relation to urban design is needed to achieve improved outcomes. So the current rules are kind of vague and have limited applicability. Other district plans make use of design guides against which certain forms of development, large-scale residential, city centre, capital works are assessed. So a design guide sets out a best principles approach while allowing for some flexibility, noting the strongly contextual nature of urban design. Kind of as the guidelines are more generic, they might not be appropriate in every instance, site by site. So a degree of flexibility is considered reasonable and kind of to be expected. However, in such cases, an equivalent or better outcome should be demonstrated. So yeah, it kind of sets out a first principles approach. The key kind of outcomes for like a design guide would be developments that are coherently designed with positive visual effects, safe and accessible, respond well to context and enhance local sense of place, address heritage values, encourage street activity, provide good quality working and living environments, and integrate sustainability principles. So the Ministry for the Environment's Urban Design Protocol, to which council's a signatory, identifies 7 qualities, 7 Cs, as being key for positive urban design outcomes, and which could form the basis for a potential urban design guide. So those are context, kind of seeing buildings, places, spaces as part of larger towns, larger urban environments, character, reflecting and enhancing the distinctive character, heritage, and identity of our urban environment, choice, ensuring diversity and choice for people, connections, enhancing how different networks link together for people, creativity, encouraging innovative and imaginative solutions, custodianship, ensuring design is environmentally sustainable, safe and healthy, and finally collaboration, so ensuring kind of communication and sharing knowledge across sectors, professions and within communities. So I've got some images here kind of just to provide an example of the type of thing that's included in nearby design guides. So this is from Hamilton City Council's residential design guide. This kind of illustrates how, various housing typologies can kind of achieve visual interest through design, as opposed to kind of monolithic blocks that, a bit of an eyesore. And then it provides kind of design guides that address a whole range of issues. Again, kind of that kind of basic principles approach, noting again that kind of strongly contextual nature of like the site-by-site design, but yeah, provides guidance on issues like this, subdivision design and things like that. So yeah, there's potential to develop that, include that as part of the district plan. Sweet. Any questions or anything? I don't know. And then an aspect of the urban design as well is in relation to transportation. So yeah, an important component is kind of achieving connections, not only within new developments, but between new and existing developments. So there's potential there to kind of shore up the district plan provisions in relation to the effects of development on strategic transportation corridors. So the business case for Cambridge Connections, I believe, is kind of established that rubric, kind of, not just in relation to roads, but things like urban mobility networks, so kind of like key pedestrian areas, cycleways, kind of public transportation networks. So those kind of key corridors. And limiting the effects of development on those, and then kind of supporting sustainable transportation options, kind of through providing on-site facilities. So for instance, like with cycling, bicycle parking, end of trip facilities. So, you know, a shower or somewhere to freshen up kind of after you've gone on a long ride, or an EV charging station, whatever it might be. So yeah, it kind of just makes it a lot more usable. Yeah, for those options. So yeah, sweet. So that's that. In relation to commercial zoning framework, so commercial zone provisions are largely generic across the district. However, it's noted that the kind of scale and appearance of the district's commercially zoned areas kind of varies from place to place. So we're considering the potential to establish a differentiated commercial zoning framework with kind of provisions that reflect the particular attributes of each area. So just as an example, the primary commercial centre zone would enable a wide range of commercial uses within the district's kind of larger commercial centres, including large scale or intensive activities that serve a district-wide catchment. So kind of your Cambridge, Te Awamutu. A village commercial zone applicable to secondary commercial centres, which accommodate smaller scale commercial activities serving kind of nearby residential and rural communities. So Prongia, Kihikiki, Ohopo. And then a neighbourhood commercial zone providing for kind of small scale convenience-based business and retail pockets serving day-to-day needs of the local community. So an example of that might be Leamington, Cambridge North. So yeah.
I'd just like to ask a question there. Is that okay to ask questions as you go through?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really interested in commercial zones that also cater for residential living. You know, so mixed zones, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think it's included at the moment actually in our current district plan, but I just wanted to flag that I think that's, I'd like that to be looked at as part of the plan change, that we could be incentivizing mixed zone living, so that sure we do focus on the look and feel of our commercial zones, particularly those primary ones, but that we are looking at ways to encourage maybe more multi-stories, so that maybe there's residential living sort of higher up or something. Yeah, so that we're going to retain, have more people actually staying there permanently in our commercial zones, which then sort of give a bit more vibrancy, especially, you know, to restaurants or cafes and other night activities and things.
Yeah, noted. Yeah. Definitely.
With that, carrying on from where Claire's been going, would we have just like a discretionary activities or that put in for those people that have a residence within a commercial zone? So the type of commercial activity would be limited with some discretionary and restricted discretionary activities, because that would have to be included as well, wouldn't it?
I see.
Because if you're having residents, you can't have some industries right alongside.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm just putting it on the table, and yeah, if there's going to be complications, so that's what I have to understand. But
yeah,
a lot of there is a movement to get like the main streets pedestrianised as well. Yeah, and so that does acknowledge that there is going to be, I suppose, a place for yeah, I suppose residential activity possibly. Yeah. So if it's possible, yeah, I guess that's something that you guys are going to have to turn your brains to.
Certainly, yeah. And ensuring, just so I've understood the point, that the commercial activities that are taking place cheek by jowl with the residential are appropriate and not, yeah. Sweet as, yeah, so just making note of that. Thank you for the feedback. Sweet as, and continuing on the commercial thread, community corrections facilities. So this was an item sought to be added to the district plan through the Plan Change 26 submissions process. So the Department of Corrections sought the addition to the district plan of a new definition and permitted activity status for community corrections facilities within the commercial zone. So that basically encompasses non-custodial service centres and community work facilities, kind of enabling probation, rehabilitation and reintegration services, as well as the implementation of community work programs. The district plan does not currently provide for these community corrections activities within any zone, and attempts to establish them require resource consent as a non-complying activity. However, I do note there is an existing facility on Churchill Street here in Te Awamutu, commercial zone, and a probation reporting service is offered through the Work and Income Office on Duke Street in Cambridge's commercial zone. Community corrections activities are important social infrastructure and are consistent with the character, amenity, and use intensity of commercial areas, and also due to kind of the unique nature and limited need for these facilities, it's not anticipated that a permitted activity approach would necessarily result sort of in their proliferation. However, a controlled or restricted discretionary status with relevant performance standards might be preferred, as kind of retaining some discretion over these activities. So yeah, to consider there. And I know Auckland, a few other councils have enabled community corrections facilities as permitted activity in their district plan. So the Auckland Unitary Plan is an example of that. Sweet. And the last item is the additional character clusters. So again, this is something that was raised through the Plan Change 26 submissions process. And the assessment, mapping, and the draft provisions are already in place, not in place, but they're already, the work's been done. The draft provisions broadly seek to prevent inappropriate development occurring in areas which represent key elements of the district's history. And yeah, so the addition of the proposed character clusters kind of, would prevent that inappropriate development occurring in those areas which represent key elements of the district's history. And as kind of the built form changes through MDRS level intensification, it will become increasingly important to kind of retain those small visually differentiated clusters. And the submissions to PC26 indicate strong community interest as well in protecting that historically derived urban character. So yeah.
Just a quick question. So that would limit the plan change for urban development, like just people being able to buy a house within one of those commercial clusters or character clusters, and actually developing that with a 3x3, as we call it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's absolutely critical. We have something that controls it.
Sweet. Cool. Yeah, we've got the maps up here as well. Hopefully, yeah, a bit low res, unfortunately. But yeah, so the new clusters are outlined in black there. So those are the ones in Cambridge, and then in Te Awamutu as well. Cool.
I just check on the purple shading. That's not part of the additional character cluster, or no? Do you know what that relates? Do you know what that relates to? It just says on one of the maps that that's where the character street qualifying matters apply. So that's why I thought it might be part of it.
Those are character streets, I believe, not the character clusters.
Oh, okay,
So
right.
yes, there are kind of like different setbacks and things like that. For that, yeah, it's it can be a bit confusing, all the character flying around. So, but yeah, it's just the kind of black outline is where those new areas are defined.
So that hatched area, like on Riwi Street there.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, kind of the red and green. Yeah, cool. Sweet. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. It was great. Any questions from anyone? It was fairly straightforward. Yeah, looking forward to it being progressed. Oh, yes, Lou?
Just one question. With the proposed now Spatial Planning Act that we've got as part of the Resource Management Act, will our district plan have any weight at all and under this new act or not?
It will until there is a new one in place. So it'll be for a few more years, yeah, I would suspect.
Thank you for that. I was a little, when I read it, I was just a little concerned of having read the Spatial Planning Act. Yeah, there's not a lot of place for us.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you guys, working on this, because we'd love to see it, put into, out for consultation and then getting notified and stuff like that. So with that, we're going to finish our workshop session. We're going to have a lunch break for half an hour, so back at 12:30. And we have got 2 workshops this afternoon. Affordable Waters Reform that Dawn's going to lead. And then Gary's going to give us a briefing on the LTP budgets, which there was no pre-circulated material, but I think we got a heads up that it was going to come. Yeah. Sorry, it's closed. Both of them are closed, I understand. Oh, it's open. Oh, okay. Is just starting the live streaming. Okay. All right, and so our workshop is affordable waters reform and update. And we've got Dawn there and Martin. Okay, so take it away, please.
Kia ora koutou, and thank you, Madam Chair. Also online, just noting today, we have Vaughan Payne, who is the interim chief executive for Entity B. I'm not sure if that's the most up-to-date title, but yeah, kia ora and welcome, Vaughan, and thank you very much for making the time to be with us today. So the background to today's workshop was to bring us all, I guess, onto the same page with respect to the recent legislation that's been passed, and to work through where that's at, and then to pose some questions to you in terms of what the future direction may be for YPAS. So yep, if we can put up our presentation while that's coming on. So pretty much starting with there are 4 key pieces of legislation. So we've previously talked about the first 3, the Water Services Entities Act. So that was passed or into royal assent late last year, and that created the 4 water services entities across the country. We then worked through the Water Services Legislation Bill that gave effect to the powers and authorities of those water services entities, and the very long-winded Water Services Economic Efficiency and Consumer Protection Bill that brought in those requirements of the entity with respect to oversight by the Commerce Commission and requirements around community and consumer protections. The most recent one, the Water Services Entities Amendments Act, I didn't make a note of the actual dates, but it was one where it was introduced to Parliament, went to Select Committee. I think there was a week, maybe a week and a half for submission. So it did pass through very quickly, but it did get royal assent on the 22nd of August. So that one in particular will be the one that I'll just work through some of those amendments today. So yeah, the Amendments Act brought into effect the 10 water services entities to be established, and that was on the back of Minister Kieran McAnulty's announcements in April and May to move away from the 4 water services entities model and move to the 10 entities arrangements. The Act also confirms staggered start dates for each of the entities, with Entity A commencing on the 1st of July 2024, and then allowing a process called an Order in Council through Parliament in terms of giving effect to the start dates for the other entities. There were discussions or possible dates sort of talked about, and those were at sort of quarterly intervals, because it was thought that across the 10 entities there wanted to be very much that staggered arrangement rather than all of the entities coming on board at the one time. And those dates need to be confirmed as to what they are by February of 2024 as in the legislation. The regional representative groups and the makeup of that was confirmed within the legislation, and looking at that balance between representatives from territorial local authorities to confirm that a territorial local authority, a local council being in an entity area would have a representative on that regional representative group, and alongside that an equal number of iwi or mana whenua representatives. Also, how that group operates relative to others, so that the regional representative group will develop up a statement of expectations in terms of the services that they will deliver. That will be built off sort of non-planning documents to mana or to wai statements that are provided, and also a new mechanism called a community priority statement that was introduced in the Act. So the regional representative group go through those, develop up a statement of expectations that's given to the board, who develop up a statement of intent, who then direct the chief executive and the water services entity to deliver on that. Alongside that, there are requirements for consultation and also for a consumer engagement forum alongside the development of those various documents. Also within the Act, there is a requirement or a mechanism for which shared services can be directed on the basis that there is an expectation that moving from the 4 entity model to the 10 entity model, that there will be some areas where those baked in efficiencies from the smaller number of entities wouldn't be achieved with 10 entities, such that shared services between entities might be a mechanism to mitigate that risk. Things like digital infrastructure, procurement, supply chain management, risk management, insurance, workforce strategy and development, debt funding and management. So those mechanisms, and just to confirm, they can be directed by the minister in terms of the entities must utilise those. And no pre-establishment merger was provided for in the Act. So only mergers post-establishment can be considered between the entities. So the use of the Te Mana o Te Wai statement and the meaning of community priority statements is all within the Act, and who is able to particularly make the community priority statements. They need to be what's known as an eligible person, which means that that person has to have a connection to the water body upon which they're making a statement and being referenced, and they've got an interest in how water services are delivered. So there's some criteria around those particular statements, and that a water services entity can say when they can be provided or when they must be provided. So setting a deadline for those to be received by them. So it fits into a rhythm, I guess, in terms of how it can be incorporated into their documents. The board, as I noted before, can also engage a consumer engagement forum, and that's further to ensure that they've got a connection to communities and help support around that development of the community priority statements. Also confirming the within the Act, and it's been talked about in terms of the entities are very clearly now named as plan takers, not plan makers, and that they've got to respond to territorial growth aspirations and not necessarily drive growth or development themselves, and it's receive and respond. And the merger proposal, as I sort of touched on, if a regional representative group or regional representative groups wish to move to a merger between two entities, there are particular requirements that across the regional representative group, there's at least a 75% level of support across that group and across both groups in terms of the supporting the merger. And that those entities have a shared boundary. So you can't have entities in completely disparate locations getting together and creating merger. They've actually got to share a boundary. And the Chief Executive and Establishment Board stay in place for 24 months from the establishment date. So they'll be appointed, and I certainly know for the for entity A, the Auckland Northland entity, the establishment board is now in place, but there will be that level of continuity that they stay post-establishment to give, as I say, that continuity of understanding through into the first 2 years. So the National Transition Unit have provided guiding transition principles for the establishment of the entities, and also how they will liaise with stakeholders, with councils in terms of giving effect to that. There are no surprises in here, I guess, in terms of what we're anticipating working through, but as always, there'll be a high level of goodwill needed on all parties to ensure that we're successful. Ultimately, we are looking after the well-being of our communities, all parties, and we'll be focused on that. So recently we received this information, which gives us an outline in terms of what implementation of these water services entities will look like. We started with a 12-month runway in terms of those tasks that are on the sort of bottom half of that slide there as to some of those key areas of work needed to give effect to it, to be ready for day one establishment. But now we've also got an advanced sort of piece of work that is starting to be recognised as leading into it. So for, as we're all watching with the Northern entity getting ready for their start date of the 1st of July 24, they're obviously now well into their 12-month runway of work. And as I say, whether you call it shared services or nationally delivered mechanisms, but it's certainly recognising, I think, that there will still be those pieces of work that are being managed nationally to create that level of consistency, so that there isn't quite such a financial burden carried by each of the entities for some of those activities I noted earlier. So I might just pause at that moment. As I say, with Vaughan online, I'm not sure if there's anything, Vaughan, you would like to cover before we drop down into the local applications. Not at this stage, I'll carry on.
Sorry, Dawn, I had my computer on mute, so tuatahi mihi ana ki a koe me Susan o te rā koutou katoa ngā kai kaunihira o Waipawa, ki a koe Gary, Dawn, koutou katoa tēnā koutou. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be present in this workshop of councils, and for those who don't know me, I was previously the CEO of Waikato Regional Council, and prior to that of Pōtiki District Council, and pleased to have the opportunity to, I suppose, as far as practicable, make water reform work for our community. So kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, thanks Vaughan. So as we start to turn our minds in terms of the implications for Waipawa working through these processes, so some dates have been talked about. We were invited to provide some feedback around that date. For Waipawa, we were very keen on it being the end of a financial year, rather than starting in any period during a financial year, just because of that burden in terms of disturbance to all of the other rhythms that council works to. So that is our recommended date at this stage. It does have implications through into our long-term plan. The fact that we will have, therefore, an opportunity to determine whether we have 1 year or 2 years within our long-term plan. So with the move to the staggered dates of commencement, you'll recall that the earlier legislation said we wouldn't have waters in our LTP at all because we were all starting on the 1st of July 2024. The new Amendment Act has changed that with the staggered start dates. So for any council who is, water services entity or council that is devolving their water services activities, they have their water services in for year one if they are starting at any point within year one or beyond that. Year 1 and 2 if their start date is within year 2. So if it comes to pass that our commencement date is the 1st of July, that's up to us in terms of what we put into the long-term plan, but we have to have at least year 1 in there. So that's a consideration we'll have to turn our minds to. In terms of our work streams underway, having looked at the principles in our runway, we've got a number of work streams where we are starting to prepare some of these things around our workforce, our data migration, our financial systems, debt settlement and the like. So that work is happening. We also have staff who are working within some of the activity areas of starting to work on organisational design, management of growth, some of those sorts of areas. And Martin is one of those people who is certainly involved in the some of the discussions, early discussions on organisational design for Entity B. Our activity management plans. So we've also had to make sure we've got an activity management plan in place for the waters activity for the first period of the 2024 long-term plan. And that has been completed. The staff absolutely pulled out all stops and got that done. And it's also gone off for peer reviews. So as I say, the staff have been fantastic in that area. We are receiving transition funding from the National Transition Unit and the DIA at this stage. Last financial year, that was in a sum of just over $500,000 to fund all of these various activities and work streams and backfill staff where they're seconded into supporting this work. And then for the first 6 months of this financial year, we've received a subsequent $270,000 in terms of funding that work. Whilst the tranche 2 of the Better Off funding was taken off the table as part of the move to the 10 entity model, the No Worse funding is still in place. We haven't yet seen the criteria in terms of how that will be distributed or the criteria being set for that. But we do understand that LGNZ are a part of the discussions in that space. And that if we are in a position where we're able to demonstrate that there is a need in terms of council's position being worse off with the loss of the water services, that payment will be received on the go live date. So that would be the date that would be received. For our staff, I guess we've got we've got cohorts of staff in different situations. We have some staff that are 100% waters, that's all they do. So they are on a legislated pathway in terms of will be mapped to a new role within the water services entities. Others who are either half of their role or just under half of their role are working through with the NTU to have conversations around offer guarantees, depending on the scope of that or the percentage of the role and the location of that within the wider business. The NTU are very aware that alongside this, for a council, we still need to be delivering great services to our community, and so that's always forefront of mind in terms of any commitment made of staff participating in any work streams and supporting things such as data migration and the like. Is how do we make sure that we're not compromising what we're delivering now? The other sort of concern that was raised with a staggered start date of the various entities is that some staff may be attracted to looking at roles with entities with earlier start dates. And so within the National Transition Unit, that's being looked at in terms of what retention mechanisms. So there is a provision within the legislation for that, to make sure that there is something that we can sort of say to staff that, stick with us, but that if it's a payment, that will only be made once the entity actually goes live. So it really is all about retaining staff within our organisation and within the future water services entity, because we've got such great people. We want to make sure that they're working in waters irrespective of how that's being managed, our waters area. So that's a bit of the background to kind of where we find ourselves and what's underway. But there is sort of conversations being held, I guess, with respect to the fact that we're very aware that politically that the policy positions of the parties leading into the general election are very different in terms of how they see the future. We're aware from various policy documents and the Select Committee report on the Water Services Entities Amendment Act that National have raised a number of concerns, and they're articulated as the pace of the change, the concern over the use of community priority statements, their primary one being actually the fundamental removal of water services from council's management and that delivery of services. And they've still indicated or continue to indicate that they'll repeal the legislation within the first 100 days if elected and return water assets to local control and ownership. The ACT Party also provide a comment in the Select Committee report that they support voluntary shared services. So an indication that this model was right, that they felt it should be voluntary rather than mandatory. But they've also talked about looking at a 30-year plan for central and local government partnership in delivering water services. And they've also indicated that they would be interested in pursuing PPP type arrangements, the private partnership model arrangements, to attract international investment in infrastructure. The one thing I've realised I forgot to cover earlier was one of the things in the legislation that's been provided for is the creation of a funding agency within waters, similar to the local government funding agency, but for water specific. So on that basis of providing something that still gives the entities access to funds that might be at a slightly lower rate than the wider market rate. So yeah. So we're also across the way in the Bay of Plenty, the councils there are undertaking a due diligence piece of work looking at possible arrangements and really what's best for the Bay as the primary thing and for their customers. If there is a change of direction, then what might that look like to be the best for the Bay? But equally asking the question that if there is no change, if the water services entities are established, would a post-establishment merger with Waikato be the right thing to do? So the Bay of Plenty are looking at that piece of work at the moment. But yeah, I guess I'm looking for possibly some feedback today because I'm very aware that October will be here before we know it. If we want to start considering looking at some due diligence work, having a conversation with our neighbours, I'm very aware that there are conversations being held at Mayoral Forum, Chief Executives Forum, but it's an opportunity for us all to, I guess, to participate, or for you all to participate in maybe guiding or providing some feedback. And equally from a staff perspective, if we want to start looking at some due diligence work, what might that look like? We do have some transition funding that we could utilise for this purpose, but it's making sure that we do the right thing and not I guess either overly burdened staff with things heading down paths that aren't going to be supported anyway, or look at those opportunities in the appropriate ways. So welcome any questions, and equally I'd know. Thanks, Mary.
Sorry, Dawn, just before we get into questions, I wonder if we could hear from Vaughan about what other due diligence work might be being done within the Waikato Bay of Plenty.
I think, Gary, I heard you say that just hearing around about the due diligence work that's being undertaken.
Yes, thanks, Vaughan.
Yeah, so as Dawn outlined, the Bay of Plenty Mayoral Forum have asked for some due diligence work to be undertaken post a reset on what their smaller entity, what its capacity and in effect is going to be to deliver on the aspirations of their communities, but also what would the capacity and merits be of a merged entity with the Waikato. In respect of any other due diligence work, I'm not aware of anything apart from, I suppose, work that the National Transition Unit naturally undertakes in terms of some of the financial modelling, and that financial modelling, I suppose, is helping to inform some of the conversations happening around the Waikato councils and with iwi as well.
So the DIA would be happy to be a partner in any due diligence work?
Yeah, I think at this stage, Gary, they would be happy to, as you'd appreciate, as government officials, they would need to ensure that any work is supporting, I suppose, current government policy. If there is a change in government policy, then there'd be naturally a shift to officials supporting that change as well.
Yes, I guess my thinking was that there's been a lot of sunk investment, particularly as we look at, computer systems and, the legal position around borrowing and entities and those sorts of things. And so critical that if council's doing due diligence, they don't lose sight of the investment that's already been made in alternative service delivery arrangements.
So Vaughan, you're not making any further comment on that? Sorry.
I need to support Gary's point that there has been a lot of investment made to date, sunk investment, and from my perspective, no matter what, I suppose, change of government policy may be, it's important that that investment is optimised for public benefit.
Okay, thanks very much for that. So Dawn, you've finished your presentation. Martin, have you got anything you'd like to say? No. So I guess we open it up for any comments or questions. Yes, Andrew.
Yeah, I don't think from where I'm sitting, see any point in starting work streams until after the election. The important thing is our mindset, that we are, nimble and able to deal with whatever gets tossed at us next month, and start from there, I guess.
I'd like to ask Martin, what are you worried about with the transitional provisions that you're going to have to work through? Just ignoring the election at the moment, because I understand you guys are just saying, right, we're just focusing on what the requirements are that we have to satisfy, with the National Transition Unit and during the preparation. Because, where do you see? I guess, what are your concerns? Because you're the one that knows the most about the business at the moment. Yeah.
Yes, well, the biggest risk to everybody is uncertainty, isn't helping anybody. But the work we're doing is getting us all ready for that. It's not currently, it's not an overload of work, but it will be once we get on that runway to July 25 and there's certainty, then that work will certainly pick up, and there will be a very strong pull between business as usual and transition. And that will be a very challenging time to manage. But at the moment, most people just want some certainty, and probably the same sort of as Andrew. Not until we know, then most people aren't putting too much effort into it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, just through the chair, a question for Vaughan. So when Mayor Len Brown was elected, he sort of made a big sort of hoo-ha about stopping all works on 3 waters. So that clearly, Wayne Brown, sorry. Yeah, sorry. So did that not happen?
No, if you like, the legislation requires work to continue, particularly with Entity A, where they are required to go live by 1 July 2025. and so as a matter of law, that entity and the work to set up that entity has carried on.
Yes, Liz.
Yeah, look, I agree with the sentiments. And look, thank you, Vaughan. Great to have you on board. Same set of hands there with your previous experience. So look, I think we're all on the same page here. Let's wait till after the election and see what happens. But Dawn, you didn't tell us what Winston Peters was thinking.
I don't know if he's announced anything.
I must admit, I'm not aware of the New Zealand First policy on this matter, and there was nothing within the select committee report. So,
Did have a look at the commitments on the website for New Zealand First. They make no comment at all about Three Waters.
Well, yeah, I'm really struggling to get anyone else to comment, but yeah, I guess it's the most sensible approach, isn't it? Just to hold fire until we know the outcome of the election. Yeah. I just feel that it puts your team in a really difficult situation, Dawn and Martin, because of all the work that needs to be done for the LTP, and that you're putting in year one, but a lot of the stuff has dependencies for further years, and it's, yeah, it must be particularly challenging.
Could I just test, following up on Andrew's comment about mindset and the need to be nimble? I guess one of the key question in my mind is, does the council still have an appetite to enter into an alternative service delivery arrangement for Three Waters, understanding the benefits that scale can come in terms of cost reduction? Because we had a lot of this debate for quite a few years, and we never quite landed on a position. But if the council sees benefit in bigger entities because of scale delivering efficiencies, then that gives us a very clear steer.
Yeah. I'd like to see some analysis of those, of what the quantification of those efficiencies would be, and whether they would be actually be real. I mean, I did share. I went through the WICS stuff, which was the Water Services Commission for Scotland that did the analysis for this water reform, and got out the slides that showed where they thought the savings would likely to be delivered. Yeah, because I mean, I'm not sure. Yeah, I would like to see some work done on that to justify it, really, because I guess, yeah, I'm agnostic about it. Yes, Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think we're already seeing the challenges that we're going to be faced with the LTP and our capital funding, and how much of an impact our Cambridge wastewater treatment plant funding is going to have on whether or not we can afford to do some of the other capital funding commitments that we've got. So it's only 3.5 weeks, and I realise that, we've got to wait for that to occur. But I think in terms of looking at the benefit to Waipa and the developing of our communities, then we've got to weigh up the impact of that major funding implication of the Cambridge wastewater treatment plant, and look and investigate the alternatives. At least the alternatives need, I think, to come back to this table so that we can have a consideration of the future impact. So I would endorse going out and having a look at the alternatives, because again, we need to know the implications of what those alternatives are going to be. Yep.
Thank you. Andrew again.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think it needs to be looked at purely and simply, are our water users going to be better off or worse off? Whether it impacts on other things is not really the issue to me. It is simply, will our water users and okay, that's the financial side of it, will our waterways and environment be better off or worse off under a bigger entity with more scale? And while I don't believe I'm religious about this, every single waters entity I've seen who's water engineers have come out and said, bigger entity will be better. Simple as that for me. It's not that I think our waters team has done a poor job. I think it's quite the opposite. It's just that every report I've seen, and quite frankly, every waters engineer I've talked to says scale is helpful.
I'm concerned about the CCO option because I don't believe it would achieve balance sheet separation, which is one of the reasons for pursuing it. Yeah, because it's said to provide, you know, much more scope for raising capital. But we did look at that and with the Waikato water study, and we wouldn't have achieved it then, so I don't think we'd achieve it now. So that's one of the arguments for scale, is that, you know, you can access capital markets better and raise the funds, and it's off our balance sheet. So, you know, that's not going to be achieved. Yeah. So that was a biggie for me. Yeah. In fact, what we heard from the Infrastructure Commission CE was that we actually have the capacity to raise far more capital ourselves, and we should be doing that, which has been increasing our own debt levels. Yeah, yeah. And the feedback I got from our community was about should we be expanding our water services to encompass other councils, was the risk, well, not the risk, but the practice of cross subsidisation, and those that haven't invested in, I suppose, upgrading their networks would likely mean that everyone would pay for it, not just the particular council or that community. And there was a lot of pushback from that as well. So I guess those are different aspects of the waters business, not simply access to a more skilled and diverse workforce. Yeah.
I'll shut up after this.
Oh no, please don't.
So look, balance sheet separation would be great, but I don't see it as being the critical issue. Yes, we can borrow more money ourselves. I mean, we set our limits. In terms of cross subsidisation, as long as Waipa users are better off, and if so, Otorohanga and Te Kuiti users are much better off, I don't mind. Good luck to them. I mean, you know, if we were worse off, that's a different story. That's unacceptable. But some cross subsidisation, as it were, you know, I don't mind. And look, in terms of efficiencies, it's not just about debt. It's definitely also, scale gives you the opportunity for standardisation of plant and, you know, staffing and all sorts of things. So yeah, that's where I sit.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I'd just like to respond to both Andrew and your own comment, and I agree with the issues that you raised. Got no problem, but I still think we owe it to our community to at least look at what the alternatives are after October the 14th. That's just a responsibility that we have as elected members, looking after our community interests. And I think we owe to them to look at what the alternatives are rather than just saying, at this stage, we're either going there or we're going there. I would just feel better if we had that information in front of us.
Yes, yes, Dawn.
I did put a comment up there about our water staff moving, and I think that's one thing we've got to keep in our minds as well, is the one of the real challenges ahead for the water sector, and in fact infrastructure generally, is our lack of people. We've got a very ageing demographic. Two of them sitting amongst you today. You know,
I can't see which two you mean.
So, you know, we need to be having, I guess, mechanisms for bringing new people into the sector, and Martin is one of the best advocates for doing that. He's looking at opportunities to bring cadets into the waters area, but we've got to recognise that it's going to be an ongoing challenge. And I do think that if other areas start to look to move forward ahead of the Waikato with similar these arrangements, we are at risk of some of our staff looking at those as opportunities. So I think, you know, that's part of our thinking as well, in terms of they're a very limited, scarce resource. We've got some fantastic people in the team, but equally they're feeling it as well, in terms of, as Martin says, the uncertainty and the fatigue of resets and rethinks and that sort of thing. But yeah, I guess put that plea in as well, that we need to think of our people in these processes as well. Thank you.
Just add to that is, along with the uncertainty, it's, as we all said, there's been a huge sunk investment in working out that it's the right thing to do. If we move, if this is repealed and we don't go ahead, but we start thinking of doing something else, from my staff, my perspective, it's just a quick decision is a good one, not another 2-3 years spending more money investigating whether it's the right thing or not, and all that uncertainty. A quick decision that, yep, it's good to form a CCO or whatever, the Waikato councils, let's do it, rather than another 3 years of thinking about it and spending money. Yeah. A quick decision is a good one.
Yeah. Thank you, Martin. Yes, yes, Gary.
Clear. For those folk that want to look at some analysis, we've spent a lot of time and money pulling together commentary on an asset owning CCO and a non-asset owning CCO in the status quo. That is with just Waikato District Council, Waipa and Hamilton City. And all of those indicated that we'd be better off. Department of Internal Affairs have produced more analysis dealing with a Waikato-centric water services entity, which indicates that everyone is better off at some stage along that journey. So any elected members who want that supporting information in the meantime, because we will post-election, I suspect, have to make a pretty quick decision to either support further negotiations, work investigation, and then entering into some arrangement, or not, and it will have a significant impact on our LTP. So we'll need to be very, very nimble. And if folks want to start doing some research, you can start right now.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Susan?
Just onto your point there, Gary, looking around the table, I mean, for us, it feels like this is well-worn territory, but 6 people around this table right now weren't here when we had those discussions. So I think if we could dig into the archives, blow the dust off some of the more crucial pieces of work we had, and to your point around sunk costs, you know, there's another one. And perhaps if we could have that circulated, not quite a cheat sheet, but people can start chewing their way through some of the pros, the cons, the data, the highlights and lowlights, just to get your head around it. I mean, there are at least 6 of us here that weren't here then.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion.
And Gary, just to respond to what you've said, so I'm not aware of that Waikato-centric work that the DIA did, that you said. So
that's in relation to Entity B that's currently proposed.
Yeah. So if there's certainly a summarised version that isn't too long.
Yes, there are a number of tables we can
That'd be
share.
good. And then responding to the stuff about the work that has been done for the Waikato water study. So that is actually quite old now. And I understanding with the preparation for this water reform, there was a lot of financial stuff done, you know, on where our situation was at the moment for all the councils involved. And so I guess an analysis that I was hoping would be that you'd somehow pull together those more up-to-date figures. You know, like one of the challenges of the Waikato water study was that we didn't have very good data to start with. There were a lot of, uncertainties or certainly questions about whether it was complete data and that kind of thing. Yeah, so.
Yes, certainly we can pull that information together for you, Claire. If you remember the last piece of work that was done for the council, it was done by Morrison Lowe, and that was looking at a non-asset owning CCO. And critically, even under those circumstances, because of the scale that you'd bring to the smart strategic thinking, and by way of example, at the moment we're going through a comprehensive stormwater consent for Waipa. Today, I think we spent about $600,000 on that consent, and we're not exactly the first cab off the rank, but it's being used. The process we're using is something of an exemplar. And so that same process will roll out across other territorial authorities. And so when you think about smart strategic thinking and smart investment, it would be useful to have one consent for the entire region, as opposed to each territorial authority going through a different consent process. So those are the sorts of benefits that come with this sort of scale. That will be in the Morrison Lowe report. We can bring that back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So any further discussion on that? Oh.
When you start bringing that information, could you give us some form of pros and cons for an asset holding and a non-asset holding CCO? And just the difference to us that would make, not now, but when, if you can bring something like that out.
Yes, certainly. I'm sure we've covered that information in the past. The difficulty with asset owning CCOs was balance sheet separation that will require a change in legislation.
All right. So no other questions? No. Okay, cool. All right. Dawn, have you got what you wanted to know?
Lovely, thank you. Yes, and just again, thank you, Vaughan. I'm not sure if you want to make any closing comments before we say.
Thank you, Dawn, and Claire and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to be present. It's obvious that you're very informed and across the issues that matter, and a slightly political statement, but I think for me, there's been a lot of good technical work done through this reform process, but ultimately this does come back to leadership, because we've got to take our communities with us on the journey, and so it's a people issue more than a technical issue in my view. But certainly very happy to work with Gary, Dawn and Martin to bring whatever work has been done, certainly by the NTU, to support your further deliberations.
Thank you, Vaughan. Really appreciate that, and look forward to working with you on this matter as we go forward. Thank you. All right. So I think that winds up the day for us. Oh, another comment from Gary.